This morning, Tuesday, May 21, 2024, we received the very sad news that Sister Gwen Rosser passed away. She was born in 1936, just before the Second World War started, making her 88 years old this year. She leaves behind her husband, Brother Jim, who was born in 1926, between the wars a few years before the Great Depression. A couple of years ago, I was able to speak with Jim and Gwen together, and they reflected on their teenage years, their courtship, and their years of service in Christ. The sound isn't great, and Priscilla's preparing dinner in the background, but it's enough to spark our memories of this wonderful couple and their service in Christ, and they will receive their reward in due course. Well, Jim, you were born in 1926, which
That's right.
means you were born just 8 years after World War One, and a few years even before the Great Depression. Where did you spend your childhood, and what was it like?
Mostly I spent my childhood in Erskineville, which was an inner city poor suburb. I grew up till I was about 4 or 5. And when the Depression hit, the family moved to Tempe, which is further out, a nicer suburb, but we were able to get a larger house and had 11 members in there to share the costs so that we could have reasonable living. Most of them were out of work, but there were enough there to help us. There was 11 people there, and amongst them was the ones involved in the truth was Uncle Jim, and of course my parents, and Alf and myself. Now, Alf actually and I came to the truth together, and he married out of the truth, and he sort of went away from it. Now, the story goes this way, that Uncle Jim, the older brother, a very capable speaker, a lovely talker, very good humour, and he was an avid Bible reader and a good musician. He joined the Church of Christ band in Erskineville, and my father had not done so because he was brought up when his mother and father died when they were both young, he and Jim, and he was sent to a Catholic orphanage. And the twins that were born just at the time went to a Catholic nunnery to look after them, and they virtually never came to the truth, those ones. But Jim did. He was a capable boy at about the age of 10 or 11. So he wasn't a state ward. He went to work for a city tailor and would run his businesses and earned a living. I don't know where he slept. But eventually, in the 1920s, when Alf, my brother, was born, and I was born in 1926, they were going to the Church of Christ at Erskineville because he left Catholicism, having been found drunk on the steps of the Church of Christ. They washed him down, cleaned him up, and of course he, out of gratitude, joined the church, which was a big step away from Catholicism because they were avid Bible people at the time. And he and Jim became capable, what they call lay preachers. They would go around the various suburbs and be called upon to speak. And so as we grew older in the 1930s, they lost a little girl, a beautiful little child, at the age of 4 with whooping cough. They had already lost a little boy when we first came to Tempe. He died with an inception of the bowel, and the operation, of course, in those days, there was no way he could live through it. Then just about when the World War struck, Dad had searched the scriptures, particularly the New Testament, very avidly, and he had came to the understanding there was no immortality of the soul, and that there was no Trinity. And having got those fundamentals, of course, it was natural that he would come to the truth a lot easier. Uncle Jim didn't have those problems because he was independent and he lived with us. And he was a wonderful speaker, a good humorist, and he taught me a lot, as did my father.
So what made Where did the interest in the Bible come from in the case of your father?
Well, when he was taken to the Church of Christ, they were Bible people, but particularly New Testament. But he loved to read the Bible, and he had an excellent memory. And in years when we were in our teens a bit, my brother and I slept in a bedroom opposite the hall to my mum and dad. And we would be reading our Bible, and we'd call out a verse to Dad from at random, and he'd always tell you where it was. He was pretty well on the market all the time. An excellent memory, which is very helpful in one coming to the truth. Well, Dad thought, well, now look, the Church of Christ hasn't got it right, so I'll search around and we'll see where we can go next. People from the Seventh-day Adventist heard about it, and they sent out one of their preachers with all these charts and devils and horns and so forth from the Revelation. And as we were going through that for a while, Uncle Jim had learned the truth. He worked with a brother from the Lakemba meeting at Metta's, who used to make things for kitchen stoves and so forth. And they used to debate at lunchtime. Uncle Jim was the best debater, but he realised that there was something there that he should be looking at, because Jack Cruz was a good Bible student, but Jim was a good debater. So eventually he attended the Lakemba meeting, and a brother called Charlie Wiley, who was well known at the time, used to teach, who'd come along for baptism. So he came down to Dad's place at this time when we were looking at Seventh-day Adventist charts, and he said, look, Jack, forget all that. He said, I found the truth. Come to Lakemba and meet Charlie Wiley, and he'll instruct you in it, which he took Alf, myself and him. And we were baptised in July 19, what was it? I was about 14. 1926, 1940. 1940.
February 1940, there you go.
Yeah.
Warwick inherited your father's good memory.
Yes, yes, he did. There's no doubt about that. Warwick has an excellent memory.
So the three of you were baptised on the one evening?
Yes, Dad, Alf and I.
Amazing. And
Alf and I went to the Lakemba Sunday School.
How old were you?
I was about 13 or 14. Alf left the truth because he always became sceptical. He was a sceptic. So I continued on, and I was baptised in February 1940. I was 1940, just as the war was starting.
So during the war years, what were they like?
During the war years, I went into work then because at the age of 15, Dad was only getting spasmodic work here and there. He was a shoemaker. He made lovely ladies' shoes, a place called Selby's Shoes, and then he earned his living at home. When I was working with Wagadatus, the lift people, I made him a little wheel for his factory at home, which had a brush on it and a sandpaper thing so that he could mend shoes and polish them up and make them look as if they were new again. He was an excellent tradesman with his trade, but his ability with the scriptures was always there. And Rex came into the truth. He too married out of the truth and left
Rex?
it. Rex was my younger brother.
Oh, the younger brother.
Yeah.
What was the situation with regard to being involved in the military in the World War?
Well, there were a few of the church members that, a couple of them that actually joined up. They couldn't face the opposition you got from people outside if you're a conscientious objector. But a couple of them did join up, even if they joined up as being in the people who go out and pick up the wounded, that sort of thing. They still had to swear that they would take a gun and protect them if necessary, which was difficult. You just couldn't be there on humanitarian grounds. You had to be a soldier. So I was in Wagadatus at the time. We were very busy. Of course, there was a lot of building going on, and particularly factories. And I used to work sometimes in one place we built a factory out in Mascot Way, just a tradesman and myself as the apprentice. And we would work for 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I was coming home one night and the world was very quiet. And what had happened was 3 submarines had come into the harbour, the midget subs.
That's the Japanese submarines.
Japanese subs.
Yeah.
The mothership was further out a bit north, and these 3 came in. But, of course, the Australian government was pretty wise. They built a net right across the southern part of the entrance to the harbour. But that Japanese just waited till the Manly Ferry came through and came in with it. Didn't work out as well. They fired a torpedo at the USS Chicago, but it was too low. It went through and knocked out a little ship that was, or ferry that was parked there for a sleeping quarters for new sailors that were in the Australian Navy. And so that was how the war affected us so much that way.
So basically, because you were so busy, you weren't actually called up to fight.
I was considered to be in a necessary occupation. They called it vertical transport. So people were needed for that, and that was all right. I left the army behind till I came to 18. I had to put in my papers for conscientious objection. But the fellas that took it in the post office said, look, at this stage we're not taking the papers like that because it's getting close to a military ceasefire. So then I was able to just go along my business otherwise.
And where did you spend the next stages of your career? Did you stay in electrical work?
Yes, I moved into the county council, which was the electricity suppliers to the city of Sydney and its suburbs. And I learnt more there because working as a electrician on the lifts, I was put with a fitter, a mechanical fitter who installed the door locks. We used to have to clamp a bracket onto the rails, which were out in the middle of this great deep hole of about 10 or 12 stories. We put a plank out, 2 or 3 bags of sand and me on the end, and the fitter would walk out on that plank and clamp the brackets on the bridge, and then we'd put 2 planks on there, and we would work in there all day without any back protection at all. If one back step, we'd have been gone. And one day we were working in the lift, putting this on, and the lift next to us had been finished. So they decided to move the car, and of course they had forgotten to take one of the planks in. And the next thing we hear this plank coming down the well, bang, 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 and we were just holding our shoulders waiting for the crash, and it went past us. So
the years before, occupational health and safety was an issue.
That was not an issue those days. They didn't have anyone there like that. That was out at Concord Military Hospital.
Ah, yes.
That was being built for the soldiers coming back with wounds and sores and that. And
that's gone through its complete life cycle and I think is not being used now.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in those years? You mentioned that you moved from Lakemba to Hurstville because there were some young ladies there who so there was obviously a youth circle, a group of young people.
The youth circle was led by a brother who had some wrong doctrine, particularly unclean flesh, as it's called. And he would make statements like, well, it wasn't really necessary for Jesus to die, sort of thing. He's moral attributes and all those sort of things all was needed. So we were not really being instructed in a lot of that. And eventually when Charlie O'Connor, for instance, people know him well, he used to come along. He was about my age group. And he would ask questions of the brother who was leading it.
Were there many young people around your age?
Yes, there was. We used to have football clubs. We'd have hiking days. We'd have 20 people go from different hikes onto some distant spots. We'd go out to past Sutherland to some of the country suburbs and hike down to the Pacific Ocean there, and Burning Palms was the place called. A very violent beach. In fact, I was working with Waganotis at the time, and one of my workers there had lost his son and one of his other companions who were there on a church picnic, and they went in for a swim. They got into trouble, and the teacher went after them, and the three of them got lost. And that man had lost his son. He'd take all his weekends and go up and down the beaches there looking to see if the body had ever been cast up.
You never recovered from that?
Never recovered.
So you were obviously a very socially active group, but it sounds also like you took the scriptures quite seriously as well.
We did have some classes there, the young people's classes, always led by one of the older ones in the meeting. And at Lakemba, we were doing a working bee, cleaning up the rubbish around the place and the weeds. And I was talking to some of the young brethren there, and we were talking about this subject that we found was being taken, clean flesh and unclean flesh, and we didn't know much about it, but we started to talk about it. And the leading brother from Lakemba, a very nice brother, he came and said, "Look, boys, that subject is not to be spoken about. The ABs have said it causes division, so it's not to be spoken about." So then we went to Lakemba, and there we found Lakemba a good meeting. It was very good in their behaviour. The Church of Christ, of course, led us along the way, because his mother and father died early. He went into a Catholic nursing home, not nursing home, a Catholic boys' hostel, and he learned a few things about the Catholic priests, that they weren't so righteous after all. And he was easy marked then to go into the Church of Christ. He was found drunk on the steps there in Erskineville in his early years, and they washed him down and picked him up, and he joined the church. So when we moved to Tempe, which is that suburb further away than Erskineville, not closer. Erskineville was closer than Tempe, but we lived in the street next to the Church of Christ. And during the Depression years, the man who was the preacher of the Church of Christ had the church built on his land, a very big land, and he was the owner of a factory that made pickles, Carter Brother Pickles, and Mr. Carter was the preacher there, and he would have his patients go to, not his patients, the members of the church could go and work for him, but seeing it was oppression, money wasn't very good, the two family members would work for one wage. And when the inspector from the council came around, all the unnamed members that were working there had to go and hide in the toilets. But he did that because he thought, well, it's, give them all a chance to earn a living. So anyway, we developed there in that way. But when we came to Lakemba, we started to develop further. And so eventually Don Gilmore, who was also a member, and myself then moved to Hurstville because we had sweethearts there. And Don, myself and Dick married the three Russell girls much sought after.
So what ecclesia was that when you went?
That was Hurstville.
Auntie Gwen, I'm going to guess that you were born in the 30s.
Yeah, I was born in 30.
In 1930?
1930.
So that's in between the two wars?
Yes. The early stages of the Depression, because I knew nothing of Depression.
What's your earliest?
I don't have very many early memories. We lived in one house in Hurstville till I was about 9, I think. Then we moved to a place, Allawah. Dad built a new home, bigger home, because there were 6 children, and we moved into Lily Street. That was then the war years. The war years didn't really make much difference to us, except my brother Bert had to go into the forest up at Gloucester
Go
Way.
and do the forest.
Oh,
forestry, chopping trees down.
So what's the history of the Russell in the truth? So you were born into a family
that were
already Christopher.
Yeah, well, my dad came in when he was about, I don't know, Dad was born in the country. He moved around in the country because his father was managing freezing work. So Dad moved around in the country. Dad was one of 10, and they moved around.
What was your dad's?
William John Russell. That was his dad.
So even your dad was born into a... So this would have been very early. Like this would have been...
yes, pretty early. But I think Dad was baptised when he was about 18 or 19. He came down to the country and he got himself an apprenticeship with Brother John Bell. And
so what did John Bell run like an...
Yes, he did. He had a factory, engineering factory. I don't know what
out of the country, freezing rabbits and stuff they got in the country.
And Dad lived with an uncle who was in the truth then. He came down and lived with them, and he then got typhoid fever. He got baptised shortly after that. Probably be about 18, I imagine. Dad's father was killed. He hit a cow up in the Lismore area on a side of a cliff, and he went over the cliff.
Driving the car?
Yeah, driving the car.
That would have been the early days of the car.
It was early days of the car. Somewhere along the line, my dad was a chauffeur, but I don't know who on earth for.
He would have been one of the first chauffeurs in the world.
I have no idea, but I know Dad was a chauffeur, but I think only a very short time as a fill-in for someone. Because Dad was a very, very good driver, and he always did his own mechanic. Yeah. He didn't get married till he was at 23. Mum was 2 years older than Dad. Mum came from Newcastle area.
How many siblings have you got?
6, and I'm the youngest. There's 14 years between my old brother.
So I know some of your siblings, but not all of them.
You'd have known Keith Russell. Bert Russell you may not have known.
So there was
Bert and Keith. And Beryl, who died at 18, nearly 19.
How old were you when she died?
I was 12. That was a very traumatic experience because Mum and Dad knew that she would pass. She was actually invalided for 12 months out of bed. She had traumatic heart. If she was alive now, she'd get new valves. Right, not available then. So she was just on 19 when she died. And so that was all during the war years. And as I said, Bert way up in the tree or able to come back. And Keith was never involved in any problem that because he worked with Dad in the essential service industry. So that
was
Beryl and Thelma, Shirley, me.
What was life like, young girl, 40s?
Slow. It wasn't anything terribly exciting.
Did you have a lot of friends? Like, did you have a big social group? Like, were there a lot of other young Christian?
We did as I grew up. Yes, we did. My dad was Sunday school superintendent for 25 years, I think. Okay. I don't know, it seemed to be forever. Yeah, when I was growing up, I suppose there was about 30 young people in her school. We had a lot of interaction with the Kemba, who had even more than us. You from Region Hall.
What sort of things did you do?
Mad things. But
mad things?
No, I'll have to be frank. It was a very unspiritual stage of growing up. Yeah, it was. We had companionship, young people's activities. We had at her store, because where I was, we had one Saturday night was a game night. One Saturday night was a so-called spiritual night. It's the dodo. The other night we used to go into Regent Hall to for a Bellamy's night. Was which was
Bellamy's night.
Bellamy's night.
Right.
It was named after a brother Bellamy, I think, who had young people have activities upstairs, and it was a combined young people.
So there wasn't, would it be fair to summarise that by saying there wasn't a strong spiritual focus, it was more social?
I would say that very easily said. The other night we used to go into Regent Hall to Brother Jim Mansfield's class, and that was the spiritual night, not spiritual.
What changed for you? Because I wouldn't have described you as being non-spiritual. Obviously, something changed in the way you saw life.
I think our spiritual, my dad was very spiritual. He was the Sunday school superintendent. He was the instructor of all the candidates. So we grew up listening to all the candidates coming home to our place, going through candidates for baptism. He was an AB. He always had literature laying around the house, Christadelphian, the Shield, as it was those days. Shield. Yeah, Dad was a spiritually minded man, as was my mum. Mum was very much that way inclined. We were brought up in a very close moral way. Perhaps, certainly we didn't have the advantage that the young people have got today with all their Bible classes and their study weekends. We had none of that. Absolutely nothing like that at all. But in our home, we did have a very upbringing by very spiritually minded, doing the right thing always, parents. That's how it was.
Were you close to yours?
Very close. A very, very close knit family all around. Even the brothers, whilst they were a lot older, we spend most of our young days babysitting their children. Yes, we were very close to them. Bert only lived at Bardwell Park, only not very far away, until he moved up to the North Shore when they had a wedding reception.
So who was Gordon Russell?
My cousin.
So
we were very close with Gordon. Jim and Gordon were good mates at the meetings.
So you were at Hurstville, and then along comes Uncle Jim.
Yes, he was from Lakemba.
Right, and joined Hurstville. Probably because he had his eyes on a young lady who was at Hurstville.
Yeah, there was no doubt. He didn't join too early, but there we are. First Bible school had Rathmine there with kids. And hard to miss one till we had away. But those 15, 50 years of Bible school, it was very much part of our life. We went to most Bible schools. Our kids were brought up at course.
Yeah.
That was their life.
Would you describe it almost as this language might sound a bit extreme, but almost like a Bible revolution in the 50s and 60s?
Oh, it was when the Bible school came. It was a revolution. We'd never heard these because we'd grown up in Hurstville. Of course, we were not in conformity with the central meeting. We were out, and we never knew that there was anything other than one Christadelphian group. We didn't know that the Shield group were not affiliated with Central. Then Brother Carter came out. That was the change in our life. Brother Carter. He came and he addressed us in the town hall, and I've never heard anyone speak quite, brother.
You remember that?
I remember that. I wasn't very old. I was under 30, I think. But all you wanted to do was put your Bible down. Just listen. That was at the big stick.
So the atonement for you back in those days was really believe in Jesus Christ and you'll be saved.
Virtually,
fairly general
very,
terms.
very, very basic. That's all it was. And then when Brother Carter explained it, you just want to put your hands in your lap, just sit. This lovely, humble voice came out when he finished. You can see I haven't had any notes. And he said, I've just got both your yard.
What was it? What part of the message affected you so much?
Well, I suppose it was just the beginnings of understanding why it was necessary for Jesus to die. I mean, we'd grown up. Yes, Jesus died to take away our sins. Yeah, that was about all we knew. That was the way God had said would happen to be in the kingdom. So that was it. You don't ask anything more than that. So when he started to explain what the atonement was, still only basically, but so much to the point that his topic was absolutely wonderful. And then we learned we weren't in fellowship with the rest of Christadelphians in the world.
And that was news for you?
That was new. Oh, we thought Christadelphia was the same worldwide.
We said, well, look, we've got to go. So we started out at Narwee in a little soldiers and sailors hall. They're still there, near the Narwee station, not far away from there. And we had a lovely, happy time there because all the strife and that was gone.
What are some of your memories of the early days of Riverwood when you started?
Riverwood was the happiest. Really was.
It was turbulent times in the ecclesia, but at the same time, during the 50s and 60s was a time of great social change in the world, in Australia.
Yes.
Did you have a sense of that at the time? Did you feel like the world was changing quickly around you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we could. Yeah.
In what way?
Because we were married, Gwen and I were married in 1950. I was 24 and she was 20. And we sort of had support from one another there, and we decided that okay, we'll have our meeting there at Narwee, and eventually we got there for one Sunday morning, and the place was like a brewery, bottles of beer and spew and stuff in the meeting hall, which we held our service outside and decided we had to build. That's how we built up the hall at Riverwood.
So how did that start? You found a block of land?
No, it's interesting how it started. We were looking for a block of land, and Brother Elliot, who had at that time the brother who had a block of land, or there was going to be a joining together of. At that time, there was English come out and joined us. I'll have to backtrack a bit there. When John Carter came out and started to teach what the truth was, he came out to Sydney and had a large meeting at Sydney Town Hall, which was a whizzer. John Carter just stood there for about half an hour and he said, let me just tell you what the doctrine of the atonement's about. And he spoke without a note. And when he finished, he said, you will notice, brothers and sisters, I had no notes. I just spoke from my heart. And he gave a wonderful talk on and that started to pull us into line where we should be and made it difficult at Hurstville for the others because that was the main problem there.
Mm.
And
so this block of land was made available?
Yes, a brother that was going with the meeting from Ted, but there was at Shaftesbury Road, they had set up a large meeting there, and on the opposite side of the line was the new meeting that started after where there was fellowship was rejoined with the old paths, what we call Little Burwood. And there was about 20 or 30 members there, and we had others join them. Lovely little meeting. And eventually they said, well, look, our GES is really difficult because we were sharing her suburb with the Shaftesbury Road meeting, so they cancelled that. And Brother Elliot, who was a sign writer, who wrote that first sign on the our hall at
the sign on the platform.
The one on the platform. Yeah. He wrote that sign up there for us.
Right at the beginning.
Do all to the glory of the Lord. And beautiful hand. He was a sign writer. And what he did, he bought this block of land where we have the meeting hall, and he had the diagram of the building drawn up, and he said to the members, let's stay together. We can have a hall there at Shaftesbury, Bonds Road.
Riverwood.
We can have a Riverwood. We can have a Shaftesbury meeting there. I'll build the meeting. I'll give you the block of land, and let's stay together. Well, we can understand why he would want to do that. I'd want to do that if someone said that we're going to move out. So we said to him, all right, well, look, we'll pay the block of land back when we deliver the debt of building the hall. We'll save up for that, which is what we did.
So what about the building of the hall then? How was that done?
Well, up in Newcastle, brother, what's his name? He was the builder up there. Oh,
Bert Ryan.
Bert Ryan. He supplied all the behind the bricks. There's a very strong steel structure that was going to hold the hall up, and he supplied all of those things free as a donation to the hall. We had a good builder. Dick did a lot of the furnishings in the place. I did the electricity ones, and other people, Fred Hulks, and he came along and did the painting and the varnishing on the.
And what about the brickwork?
The brickwork was done by one of the builders' people. So that was how we had a beautiful start. We were so happy with it that John Martin had come over, and there was still trestles and that in it. We had a meeting there and a talk. It was just lovely to have a place where we felt we had a home, and it's been our home for many years. And with our difficulties that we've had, particularly the difficulty with Ted Sponberg, that was quite difficult physically on us and mentally with that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Israel over the years and the effect it had on you and those around you. In 1948, obviously Israel was
when Israel was declared a nation, and later on when Jerusalem was surrounded by enemies, the newspaper came out with the thing that a ring of iron around Jerusalem. That particular night, we had a few around and a few prayers about this going on. And when I went to bed that night, I dreamt that there was a knock on the door. It was the angel. And I nearly fell out of bed, I think. But he sat me down in the lounge room there, and we had a chat about things. And
this is all in your dream.
Yeah. Oh, it was all there in the dream. Yeah. And
was that brought about by an expectancy because of what was happening?
Yes.
In the land.
And not long after that, we received an invitation from the Jewish community that if we come across to the Maccabean Hall, some of the Christadelphians are going to talk with the politician, Doc Evatt. Doc Evatt, that's right. Doc Evatt was the chairman of the UNSCOP meeting on the Palestinian issue. And he said at that meeting, he said, I was this chairman on this meeting, and the Jewish people would come along, and they were terribly disappointed because they had to get a 2/3 majority at the vote to become a state. And he said that their people were not very happy about it because everybody seemed to be against it. And he said that at this meeting, the leader of the Jewish community, Chaim Weizmann, called them together every morning and quoted them from the scriptures, the Lord will set his hand a second time to gather his people back to Israel. And the two brethren at our meeting who were sitting in the chair and they then stood up to have their speak, and the chaw of Doc Everett, as they're going along, showing from the scriptures how it had to be, his jaw was just dropping open. It was about that time that Fred Hugs was brought to our meeting, because he came to our meeting, he said, to see what the Christadelphians say. And so they sat at the back with Gwen and I and our kids. I shared the Bible with Fred, and from that time we became good buddies, and eventually he joined our meeting.
There's been quite a lot of people coming to the truth at the Riverwood meeting over the years.
Yes, that's so. And you see, with the with the Israel one, the first time the hall had seen so many people that hadn't been for years come along.
When we started to go to Bible school, we were taboo. We were foreign, and we weren't very comfortable to Bible school here. And we used not to go to the meeting up there, and we'd leave it after the meeting at first, so that we would be back ready for the next meeting. Come back Saturday night, go there. Much the same time after that became the Association Sunday School. That movement came much the same time as that, and of course we were involved in that too. So we were not very popular. I don't know what they thought the Bible was going to take away leisure and.
Well, it's a good question, because you're going there to study the Bible. It seems inexplicable that could be a wrong thing, doesn't
it? But they were terrified of it. They really were.
So in the end, you decided better off.
Well, in the end, in the ecclesial scene, Jim was finding things very, very hard. Got to a point where they couldn't accomplish anything. Everything was blocked, gone. So when it was thought over, and we thought that there were enough who were unhappy enough to start, the 36 of them left.
That's quite a number.
It was quite a number.
Would that have been about half?
They had. Oh no, Hurst had about 200 at that stage. It was a big ecclesia. But we did take the recorder, the assistant recorder, the Sunday school, and nearly all the teachers, Sunday school teachers, all went.
It would have been quite traumatic for everyone.
It was a very traumatic time. It's taken, I would say, a very long time for, if you can say it's ever healed.
When you look back over your years in the truth, what are some of the happy memories you've got?
Oh, the happy memories is that we have so many brothers and sisters that are full of love for one another and support one another as they were going through life. And we found the loss of the arguments and disabilities and so forth that we had from other people, we just didn't have. We were so united there. Mainly, we stood firm where we were, and that was what was really so wonderful about it.
So you talked about how happy you were at Riverwood.
Oh, yeah.
Why was that?
Why was that? Everyone felt the same way. We all had a desire to get our head into the Word of God and learn to live what we've learned. It's just a new era. John was recorder at Riverwood as he had been recorder at Hurstville. So Dick was the school superintendent. Really, it was just a shift. But it was a lovely thing, and we from that time on we started cottage class. We would say that was the best thing that ever happened. Cottage class, you learn more. We did Romans, we did Help Us Israel, we did Eureka, we did Law of Moses. Plus the fact that we started our sister home class, and that I would recommend absolutely. We used to have about 15 or 16 come home still got the list of them, maybe 30 or 40 of them, find different books. Anastasia, you name it, got it down. We used to have a class every week, all day. Tuesday was this class.
Every week?
Every week. Come for tea, lunch, or supper, school, they'd go home, they'd get their kids home from school. That was absolutely invaluable because we were really not very well educated, I mean spiritually. And because we were all much the same level, people never felt embarrassed about to ask a question. A lot of them were the older sisters that had never had anything in the way of Bible instruction in life. You all used to say, if I've got to have an appointment, not on Tuesday. Tuesday was a very, very special day all round. Every week we had. But they were our formative years. We'd learn to go home in the afternoon. I'd usually hit you with questions, Jim. And they were very, very valuable years. But I don't think we can ever turn the clock back to get what we had then, because the young mothers have got many more distractions now than we had, because I never worked after I was married. You weren't supposed to work when you were married those days. So when my kids went to school, and I used to work. My father had a shop, work a day a week over there. I used to do things one day a week here, there, and everywhere. But when this came up, it was something very precious now. I would say that those days in this class were absolutely valuable, and there was a bond that came thus from Sister Kemba and Sutherland and so on that was really very, very precious.
Through the years, you've read a lot of Christadelphian books that have been written. Is there a particular book that always comes to mind?
I love John Carter's work. When I was at Lakemba, every time a new book came out, I would buy it because it was only cost about 7 shillings or something like that. And John Carter's books were amongst the best of them. So I built up a good library, and I found that his works were some of the most capable of teaching you a lot of things about the truth. Mm. He was a wonderful brother, John Carter. He, as I say, we had him out at Sydney there, and he was so impressive.
Think about the young people today and the world they live in. Mm. What advice would you give them?
I would advise that they start looking into the scriptures more and start realising that the things of the world are not worth having.
Mm. The world's such a different place today. When you grew up, most people would have been Christian or nominally Christian, whereas today, not so much.
That's true. Yeah.
And that does...
So you talk to people about Sunday school. Kids don't go to Sunday school today, so they don't grow up with any education or that.
I wanted to ask you one final. That was, you had to offer some final advice to young today. What would come to mind?
I think our coming together is a lot more social than it used to be. When we'd have an evening with our brothers and sisters, they used to come and we'd do reading together the last couple of hours, and they was the way we used to do it. I would say they do have a lot of social time together, which could be cut down and used in a more profitable way. Yes, have your social time. I don't know that. That's valuable. But they do have a lot of social. And I think the other should be virtually up. There's nothing quite like it to get hold of something out of only new to you, but it's wonderful.
Yeah.
You found something very, very special and precious.
How have you changed over the years?
Eventually, I've realised how little I knew when I thought I knew so much. But I've learnt since then, I've learnt to understand the scriptures more and more. And that's what's really changed me. I thought I knew all about it, but I didn't.
You never stop learning.
No, you don't. And I thank God that He's kept me alive long enough to search more of the truth out. Because I'm getting weary in years now. I can't read. I haven't been able to read for about 10 years because of the macular blindness. And but He's given me a memory and He's given me an understanding that I thank Him for it.
Well, you've passed on your love of the scriptures to your family and and they've passed it on to their families.
Yes, we've got some wonderful response in our family. They've been very good to us in our older years. Look, I just found that I go to bed at night and I think about the truth, and I think it's so wonderful that God has allowed me to see all these things, which I thought I knew when I was teaching in the early days at Riverwood, but it grew. It'll come if you try it.
Yeah. And so many people are thankful for your example and the legacy that you have left through these years.
Yes, I'm afraid it makes me proud, and I pour scorn on all my pride when I hear people express their love for me like that. It's a wonderful thing.